I am here with Carrie Scott. Such an honor. And my name is Tatum Dooley. I'm the founder of Art Forecast. It's a communication agency focusing on communicating art, hence the title. The last 10 years, I've also worked as an art writer, written for Art Forum, Globe and Mail, Canadian Art, Border Crossings, basically anywhere there is to write. And yeah, I'm so happy to be here, and I'll let you introduce yourself before we jump in.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me? Yes, good. I fear I'm going to twizzle this entire discussion, so if anyone gets annoyed, tell me to stop twizzling. Tatum, thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to start with like the most giant heartfelt thanks to the Plural team. I can see a few of you, Simone, Imoko, Erin, Annie's not here, Marie, everyone. You've all just been phenomenal. And I really am thrilled to be here. And I'm super excited to talk about this topic because I have a bit of a complex, complicated relationship with how I talk about art. And I'm hoping we can get into it. But to introduce myself, I am Carrie Scott. I've been in the art world for 20 years and worn several hats. I've run commercial galleries, been a curator, sometimes an art broadcaster. I'm forgetting things, I'm sure. And in 2008, I started my own consultancy where I sort of helped artists do things outside of the white cube. And that then evolved into launching Scene in September of 2024, where we're sort of trying to demystify the art world without ever dumbing it down, connect art to a more general audience, and basically get more people involved in this wonderful world that we all know is great, but that lots of people don't.
I'm gonna put everybody on the spot. Who here follows Carrie on Instagram? Hands up. Okay,
Thanks,
good.
guys.
By the end of the talk, I want everybody's hand to be up. Carrie posted an amazing video this morning just about how great Plural is. I already knew that. I've been coming here for years. I know Plural is one of my favorite fairs. But I know it really resonated with people, and I wonder if you want to give us a little recap of your video.
Oh, jeez. Well, I basically was in my head contemplating this idea, like, does the art world need another art fair? We've got so many, and we know how taxing they are on the galleries in particular, right? High cost, huge resources are required to come to these things. And so I was asking myself that, on the back of being here and feeling really great about being here and super impressed with the programming here. You know, the quality of artists downstairs, upstairs, everywhere. It's been phenomenal. And so ultimately my answer to that question was, yeah, I think we do need another art fair, but what we need is really the Plural model. And you feel it in the fabric of this place. Tatum and I were talking about something that we recognized yesterday, or I recognized yesterday, you recognized today, that a trolley went out earlier for all the gallerists, bringing food to them. And that, I think, tells you everything that you need to know about this fair, that like the organizers are looking after the galleries. It's not a sort of parasitic commercial operation, which is not to say that every art gallery is that way, but many, or every art fair is that way, but many can be. What's your experience of it?
I mean, absolutely. Like, I think what you said, galleries for galleries, made a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And I kind of want to segue into that idea of the medium, because in this video, it's very simple. Like, you have your iPhone front-facing camera, and you're just talking. I think that's really why it resonated, because it really seemed personal, it seemed genuine, and I'm like, why that medium? Because I think you're challenging me to think about communicating art in new ways. When I think of how I would have communicated it, I would have written a newsletter post, I would have done, a photo on Instagram and just like written a caption. But the way you did it was so effective. So how did you come to that? What was your journey to get to that medium to talk?
I blame Brittany Bruce, who's right there. So the journey is a long one, right? And this is why I say my relationship with the way that I currently communicate art, or the way that most people know that I communicate art, is through this 1 minute, 30 seconds. Let me give you like the top line, the most basic thought about whatever it is I'm thinking about. And sure, I've tried to organize it and make it succinct, but it really is like the tip of the iceberg of a much bigger thought. And I mean, I chose my grad school because there was an article I had read in art forum by a professor there, and I loved the article, and it was so dense, and like I didn't understand what she was trying to say. I didn't understand really what she meant about the work, but I loved that sort of academic art criticism, and I still love it. And Brittany would attest to this. When we're talking about big topics, I will write hundreds of pages or hundreds of sort of drafts of something until I get to a place where I think we can even share it. So I like those like dense academic texts, but that's not like 99% of the world is not going to engage with art that way, in the way that 99% of the world doesn't engage with science that way, in the way that, right, and we could do this throughout multiple different disciplines. But I got frustrated with art speak a little bit. I got frustrated with talking in silos, so that the art world kind of talks to itself and only cares about itself and wants to be self-congratulatory and is not like waving our hands, being like, hey guys, this is really cool. Like, come look at this. And I spend my life feeling that way. And so Brittany and I were working on a project for some clients who happen to be Swiss billionaire art collectors. So it was a really cool project. And I was able to bring in a social media expert. And Brittany noticed that whenever we did the really formal, like, let's write the long post and let's have the beautiful images up and make it all a bit pulled back. And then every once in a while, my face would pop up and be like, this artist is just really cool. And Brittany was like, those are the only things that are working. So if we'd like to keep this gig by these billionaire Swiss people, we should probably just keep having your face there. And I was like, no, it's not about me. It's not about me. I never wanted it to be about me. I'm a pretty private person. So no. And then like 6 months later, I was like, I think this could be a whole business. Let's just turn this into a whole business where we get artists to talk this way and open up their studios, and let's remember why the art world is as amazing as it is. Let's remove some of the gatekeeping and the press releases and the dense texts and see what happens. And now you're stuck with me.
Lucky us. I mean, I think about art speak a lot in my own practice because I tend to do, or I have done art speak, I will admit. And it's always when I do not understand the art that I'm trying to write about. And it's a way to kind of fall back on this feeling of superiority because I'm actually feeling maybe insecure that I don't understand it. Maybe I could put a few big words and people won't know that I don't understand it. And so it's like, you really have to know what you're talking about to be able to simplify it. So it really is a testament to the way that you're communicating art. We had a call, Carrie and I, a few months ago, and I was asking these kind of questions, prepping for this talk, but also just out of curiosity, spending so many years as a writer and being like, I'm a writer, that's what I am. And I was like, but this seems kind of cool what she's doing. So I asked you about it, and you're like, yeah, it feels uncomfortable at first, but you just have to do it, and it gets more comfortable, and it's about, the value of trying to reach more people of your messaging. And so I started a podcast because of you. I was like, I'm gonna make a podcast, Like,
that's awesome.
It's very inspirational.
That's very sweet. I think that the key to that, though, is we all have to find our way, right? And so I love that you started a podcast, and I love the way you write. I was telling Brittany this morning that I went and read a couple of your articles this morning because I was like, I need to actually understand how Tatum does this. But where I think you see success is when you're sharing yourself authentically and your excitement authentically. And like, artists are trying to do big, giant, complex things that half the time I don't understand them. And so Instagram for me starts as me being like, hang on, what am I looking at? What do I feel? Is this something? And half the time I feel like I don't get the answer. But but I'm putting the sort of big question out there.
You're inviting people into your process of understanding art, and through doing that, they will then understand how to navigate their own process of looking at an artwork.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I watched an interview that you did, and I'm forgetting the artist's name, but you kind of come out and say, when I first saw your work, I didn't really get it. I thought it was like a little young. I thought it was just fun. And it wasn't until I saw it that I saw it was forensic. It was detail oriented. And it was like, it was so vulnerable. And yeah, so I'm wondering, like, when you're going into an interview like that with an artist, what is your plan?
Whatever my plan is definitely not what happens. Like, I'm sat here with notes. I haven't said any of the things on here. But that was an interesting interview. It was with Damien Elwes, Carrie Elwes, you know, the guy in The Princess Bride, his brother. And he does these huge portraits of studios. So like Van Gogh studio, Picasso studio, Basquiat studio, Damien Hirst studio. And they, like I've just described it, it felt a bit like a one-liner. And I went into that interview thinking, this is going to feel like a one-liner. But this work's really popular, and so I should give it I should have the grace to be open enough to look at it properly and to listen to his story. And I did. They are forensic. I mean, you use that word. I think I do use the word in the interview because he spends years studying or trying to piece together what Van Gogh's studio looked like. He went into Frida Kahlo's studio for I think 3 months. And like sat in the corner on a chair because that was the only chair they let him sit on so he could paint this thing. And he has all these amazing details in this in every studio. Damien Hirst's, he's pieced together by watching Damien paint in the studio. And so Damien's is a bit like, you know, skewed. But actually there's details in it where you then realize exactly where it is, which is on the River Thames, just down from Hammersmith Bridge. And so there's those sorts of details that you can just hang on to. And I guess that is, I mean, I love that you've pointed this out because it gives me the opportunity to say, that's the thing that like we all need to do, right? Is just to look. And even if we're looking at something that you think you understand or you think you've wrapped your head around, you're like, right, that's a picture of a flower, I'm good. So often there's a bigger thing happening there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm now thinking of this title, Communicating Art. How to communicate art. It's not just about art as an aesthetic value. Oh, I like that art. I don't like that art. Like, it's what we're trying to do, what you're trying to do, I think is much bigger. We're trying to communicate art, every part of it, holistically, one might say. So how do you, I mean, yeah, so you're communicating with specific artists, talking to them, but then you're also talking about the art market and creating a kind of world building. So how do you think about those things?
So the art market is a funny one. And I have been part of the over-financialization of the art market, as in my career sits, the last 20 years have basically, it's become an asset class to the art world's detriment, I think. And I hope that we are at the beginning of a pendulum swing back away from that and understanding that art for art's sake really, truly, deeply matters, that like cultural wealth is our most important commodity, and I mean that. And so I think you're seeing a few people rise to the surface that aren't talking about the financial part. Now, that's not to say there are several huge accounts that's all they do. They talk about the numbers. And I've backed away from that, but what I have done is spend some time like explaining what's going on with a frieze. So when frieze was bought, I was like, why? What is this value is insane. How are we valuing it? Again, asking questions. When a crook is released from jail, I occasionally prod that bear quite openly as to what this is. Inigo Philbrook. I don't know if anyone knows him, but so I'll talk about, like I said, literally, I talk about the things that are running around in my head that I can't get out of my head, that I've mentioned to Brittany. I've now lost her. She's like my security blanket back there. Yeah, the things that I don't have the answers to, but I think that we should be asking and maybe not necessarily accepting about the art world. we all do things in certain ways because we're told that's how we're supposed to do them. And I'm never sure that that's necessarily the right path for all of us. I guess it goes back to like your authentic calling, but I don't know that I answered that question at all.
I think it did, but it also brought up, you used this word wellness. And so I'm hearing kind of art for you, it's not about this financial asset class. It's moving away from that and into something that is intrinsic, inherent, necessary for people's well-beings. I'm so curious to learn more about how you got to that place from your background of working more in the financial sector of the art world.
I mean, doesn't art make everyone here feel better? It always makes me feel better. I mean, I can give some very tangible examples as to how this has like played out in my life personally. So I started, my first job was at Condé Nast in New York City in 2001 in May. And September 11th obviously happened super shortly thereafter. I was a young girl in the city. My entire worldview was rocked by the events of the 11th, as was everyone's. And instead of like falling into bars, which I'm sure I did for a few weeks, months, I quickly kind of found a safe haven in art galleries. And one of the best employee benefits at Condé, they don't pay you much, but we had membership to every single museum in the city. So the Whitney, MoMA, the new museum, all of them, you could go anytime you wanted. And so I was there all the time. And I think I quickly realized that it was making me feel better and that I should probably try and do that as a career. So ended up applying to grad school in the hope that I could write about art from a travel perspective because I was part of the travel arm of Condé. And from there, right, like I could give you 20 other examples throughout my life where it has made me feel better. But it wasn't until I interviewed Martin Creed, Scottish artist, and he and I were talking, and about 15 minutes into the interview, I looked at him and I was like, does art just make you feel better? Does this make you feel better? And he's got repetition in his work, and we were talking about the structure of repetition, and I was sort of seeing it as a beat, and then it dawned on me that his practice is all about trying to help himself feel better. And he looked at me and was like, yeah. And it was so like, are you, like, what's wrong with you? Of course, yeah. And I think maybe that's what drives most of the people in the art world, maybe, or I hope.
If art is making you feel bad, you should find a new career path,
well said.
Perhaps. Go to music, I don't know. But I mean, that's amazing that Condé Nast was offering those kind of benefits. I didn't know that, and it's kind of made me think about my own experience in museums, which started much earlier in life, like as a young person, 6, 7 years old, going to the museum as a place of fun and, running around. I was always getting in trouble from security guards. They were like, you have to put your digital camera away. Photos are not allowed. So I had this rebellious idea about like going into the art world. I loved sketching. But I didn't it seemed like something that was only happening over there. Like, I wasn't allowed to work in the art world. That was for people that were just naturally talented. And, I had all of these preconceived notions of what it meant to work in the arts until I got older. And I was like, okay, I can come at this from a different angle. And I think that those early experiences are why it was so important to me to communicate art in a way that is accessible, fun, playful, all of those things. And so I'd love to know if you also, were those early memories?
I mean, very similarly, my parents separated when I was tiny. My dad stayed in the UK. I was born there. I then moved to the States when I was 4 or 5. And I have this really distinct memory of going back to the UK, and I don't know how old I was, to see my dad. And he had a client who had a house on the same square as the Wallace Collection, which is kind of like it's a private house turned into a public museum, and it's the 80s. So he dropped me and my elder brother off at the museum, and he did this more than once. My mother's in the audience, And I'm half like, I wonder if she even knows that this happened. But he'd do this often. So he'd like go see the client and he'd pay off the security guards and let my brother and I run around the collection. And my brother is not arty at all. So I think he was busy looking at like the knights, like the armor, while I was staring at a Fragonard painting, the one at the swing.
It's an amazing one.
And I would quite literally sit on the bench in front of this Fragonard, and then I would start to pretend that the whole house was mine, and no one was there, so it was kind of mine, and it became this whole world. And then fast forward to, I'm in a liberal arts education, and I was asked to take an art history class, and I'm sat in the art history class, and the slide came up, and it was the Fragonard painting, and I was like, that's a famous painting? What do you mean? That's my painting. So I think I probably have a slightly similar...
Yeah, I mean, this just makes me think of imagination as something in the art world, and I don't know if that's talked about a lot, but when you look at a painting, I just went downstairs, looked at a lot of beautiful paintings, and what I imagined was going home with them. I was like, maybe if I had a lot of money, I would buy this. Like, I don't know, there's some like world building that we're doing when we're participating in art. And so what does it mean? Like, what do you recommend to somebody to take part in this wellness journey within the art world? Like, how do you go? What is your prescription if you're the doctor?
I love how you just put that it is this kind of imagination world building, and you're right, nobody talks about that. Really. I mean, artists do, and we talk about artists' imagination, but the other roles in art, I don't think we do necessarily talk about that. So that was beautiful. Well, we should probably back up because we're touching on something that you and I did discuss when we first met online. And it's this idea that we all know about our wellness, and we talk about our mental health and our physical health, but we don't talk about creative health. And I think if you're thinking, well, certainly, if I'm thinking about my wellness, there's a tripod, and if one of those things falls, I'm off kilter. Like, I need all those things to be fed in order to feel happy, I think. And so I do see our creativity and our imagination as being really critical to wellness. And in a funny way, I hope that we can, and I'm saying we all can maybe push this idea of creative health into the public domain in the way that, you're allowed to be really into yoga, or you're allowed to be a runner, or you're allowed to run and call yourself a runner, but not do marathons, or not be in the Olympics, right? But I find so often that artists even struggle to call themselves artists unless they are showing here, right? Or unless they are at Frieze and Basel and all the big, or the big gallery. And it's like, what is that about? You can meditate and not be the Dalai Lama, but we have this strange thing where it's like, no, you can be creative and it's a hobby, but you can't call yourself an artist. And I think that needs to switch a little. And obviously this thought is still forming in my head, and I'm on page 42 of a paper about it that eventually I'll figure out how to share and make sense of. But I think our creative health, it's really necessary, and I've completely lost my way. So what were we talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like creativity is something that's generative. Sometimes I think people worry that it's finite. If you make something, then it's gone. But I think the more you engage with your creative side, your artistic side, the more ideas come. I find that as a writer, it's like if I take a month off writing and I have to put pen to paper, I'm stuck. But if I write every day, I have more and more ideas. So it's something that builds on each other. And so it's something that can be exciting as a daily practice for anybody. Yeah. And then you don't know where it goes. It grows and grows, maybe?
So true. And right, the analogy with running, the first time you run after a month off, you're like, my knees will never do this. And then you're fine.
Yeah.
So practicing our creativity, practicing looking, practicing talking about art, I think are all really important.
Yeah, practicing looking. That's a very interesting concept, because I I don't know if we're used to it in today's world, where you actually just go, what does it mean to look at a painting? I always hear that you always know who an artist is because of the way they're looking at a painting. They're like, crouched down, they're like really close, they're scanning, they're spending time, versus maybe, I see other people moving through a museum and they're glancing, they're taking a photo, and it's like, that's actually something that you can learn how to look.
When you approach your work, what's the first thing you do?
Ooh. I think the first thing I do is look. It's like, definitely, I think it's unavoidable. I do make a judgment when I first look at it. I think I look at it and I say, oh my God, I love it. And then I want to spend more time with it and do this kind of scanning, look closer. What is the medium? Do I know the artist? Can I guess the artist without looking at the label? Playing those kind of games. If I don't like the art, same kind of process. You're asking yourself questions. Well, why? If I spend more time with it, will my opinion on it change? I feel like you mentioned this on your Instagram story, that you had a piece of work at the fair that grew on you. And if you want to talk about that.
It's funny how, this is as a way to look at art fairs, I think, are really hard. Right, you see so much so quickly. There's tons of people. There's tons of noise. It's a pretty hyper-saturated environment to find stillness and look. And I did mention, I now can't remember her name.
Kate O'Connor.
Thank you, Kate O'Connor, at Hunt Gallery, who I saw the work at the opening, and it's bright and it's colorful, and I was like, interesting, and it's a solo booth. Of that work, but I didn't contemplate it further. And then yesterday I went back through and I was like, I really want to look at these again. She's got a really distinct style. The light in them is wacky, and the figures are kind of cartoonish and animated. It's not something I'm normally kind of be drawn to. But the more time I spent in her world, the more I got seduced by it, I think. And it's a great lesson in, I guess, being slow to look. And I think that that's a really hard thing in today's society, right? We're bombarded by images, like 300 images before you even get out of bed if you look at your phone. And so being here, it's kind of an opportunity to slow down and look and look and look and look some more.
Yeah, a lot of looking. I love an art fair as a place that there's an opportunity to be surprised. So it's very good. But, I'm going to pivot slightly on the question though, if that's okay, because now that I have you, I feel like you have such a wealth of knowledge that I could use. So this is a bit of a selfish question that I want to ask. So I have Art Forecast, and then I have me. And I've never understood how to merge those two things. I have my personal account, I have a business account, and they're separate. I never post myself on the business, and my personal account, I post, my dinner out or something. I feel like you're navigating this in a very graceful way, and I'd love to hear how you're thinking about those two worlds are they separate, are they together? Who are you?
Well, first of all, thank you. None of this feels very graceful. It's all pretty clunky. If you're in it, I promise. Scene, I think I'd sort of touched on this, or at least I referenced it quickly. Like, I never wanted Scene to be the Carrie Scott show. This whole thing was never meant to be this Carrie Scott show. It was meant to lift up artists and talk about creativity and talk about this beautiful world that I have been part of for 20 years and that I love, right? With all its foibles. I do. I think art is amazing, and I think the art world's amazing. So because I never wanted it to be the Carrie Scott show, I wanted to make a kind of umbrella brand that could get voices like mine or people who are excited about art, and eventually have correspondence all over the world so that we could, and this is like crazy ambitious, and who knows if we'll pull this off, but this is the hope, that we'd have a Tatum who's reporting on what's happening.
Okay. I'm in.
Job interview done. right? And that we'd have someone in Paris, and we'd have someone in Mexico City, and we'd literally start to sort of like a Substack for art crazy people, and paint an accurate picture of what's happening in the art world. And so my account is one thing, and then Scene is another. Scene is much more Brittany, and she keeps it super pro and very polished. And mine is, like I said, I'm in the shower and she's not awake yet because Brittany's in New Jersey and I'm in London, and I'm like, we're gonna just talk about this. And what I don't share a lot about my life, and some people get really cross about that, weirdly. There's someone who forever, occasionally my husband will pop up, and then I'll get a DM from this person who's like, we know nothing about your husband. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And he's got like 100 followers and has a private account. We've never posted our kids online since way before one of them's 12. And when he was born, we were like, we're not going to do that. So I've always been quite mindful about how I use social media. And it's always been a business thing rather than a me thing, which sounds really weird because you all follow me.
The parasocial is, I think, a reality, a sad reality of now being a woman online. Okay, what do you think of the word influencer? Do you see yourself as an art influencer?
No, I don't. But we have influence. And that is great. And I am really, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I'm enjoying, we put up a video last summer of Zena Blackwell, who's a young, she's my age, she's young painter, and she's kind of obscure, but she ended up selling like 8 paintings and 4 prints in a day. And I was like, this is why we were doing this. Someone just, it changed the course of her financial year. We just posted about, there's this really tragic thing happening in Glasgow where 6 different art communities are being evicted from a building, and there are about 200 artist studios in that same building, and they're being evicted because of that classic developer thing where developers let artists be there for a long time, they made it cool, and now let's triple the rent. And I found out about it. It was talked about in a little regional Glaswegian paper. We posted about it. We asked people to sign a petition, and that seems to have moved the needle for those businesses, because the council has now gotten involved. A developer got involved and said, I have this other building, you can come over there. And we had sort of 8 or 9 artists write in and say, thanks so much, we think you changed the course of events here. Which, that's cool. So if that's influencing, I'm in. But I'm not going to start posting products.
I just got chills. Honestly, that's such a heartwarming story. And I think that the way that you articulated that makes sense to me as well. An influencer is selling something to you, and you are using your platform to influence, so to actually be in service to artists. I think that at the end of the day is what you're doing, so it's so incredible. And then, yeah, I feel like I know some faces in the audience. We have curators, we have art consultants, not just artists, and it is the reality of our times that you do have to be online. I guess you don't. You could choose not to, but for the sake of this conversation, part of it is having to be online. And so how do you recommend that somebody navigate those kind of things of being in between, to focus on the influence rather than the influencer?
Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
It goes back, I've got no advice, right? This was not the plan. I've just I've enjoyed and followed, or I've enjoyed following what felt good. So one of the first big reels that we did, that I actually did from my mom's bathroom over December break 3 years ago. It was about Hauser and Wirth launching a collaboration with a smaller gallery. And it was the 6th example I'd heard of this happening. So a big gallery collaborating with a smaller gallery, and that they were talking about it as collaboration, right? That's not something you hear from the blue chip galleries often. And I mentioned that I did it from my mother's bathroom because I think she had the children and my husband wasn't there yet, and it was Christmas. And I had read the press release before I got on the plane, and it was in my head the whole time I was on the plane. And then I was like, can someone just like, this is new, right? This has never happened. Can someone just explain this to me with my little phone in front of me? And I was like, ugh. And that's really what we just keep doing. I just keep, like the Glasgow example, I read the thing and was like, are you joking? This cannot be okay. So I picked up my phone and did the thing. So that's what works for me. But I don't think that would work for everybody. So I wouldn't, And just get it quickly. Yeah. What I think is so fun at the moment is watching, and I did write some of them down, but like there are a bunch of us now, like a dozen. The jealous curator, who she's the OG of all of this, right? Sharing her joy and enthusiasm around what she sees. But you've got the art bystander with like 200,000 followers. You've got Goodnight Gallery, Larry's List, Jeff Majid, who at one point might have been on the panel with us, James Payne, who does Great Art Explained. He's got like 1.4 million followers on YouTube. But there's a bunch of us who are like, guys, this is so cool. And I think, and you, right? Like, and that's epic, the generosity of that. And so if we are art influencers, I think you're right to say it comes from a place of generosity.
I mean, I feel like I have maybe kind of a boring response to it because, like, practically, I think what you mentioned, not posting your child, not posting your husband because of those parasocial relationships, is like how you have to then enter into it is with a sense of boundaries, a sense of how you want to present, a sense that it's not like who you are in person is not 100% reflected online. Just to keep your sanity in check, and that, sometimes the criticism is part of it, the embarrassment is part of it. It's like the cost of entry to putting yourself out there, and then just creating kind of systems that keep it going.
Well, and you raise a great point, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that like I have this complicated relationship with, I have 1 minute and 30 seconds to tell you something that I know is so much more complex than 1 minute and 30 seconds. And so some of the posts I put up, I'm like, this feels vapid and is not enough, right? And what I hope is that we can take those 1 minute, 30 second things and then get people into bigger, longer discussions, which is why we do our long format interviews with artists, because I think depth is really important.
I was going to say, we're talking a lot about the public nature of communicating art, but I know you also do things one-on-one, consulting with artists, with collectors. What does that look like, and how does the communication style shift? I mean, you don't have a minute, thankfully. You maybe have an hour. What are some things that, how do you work in those contexts?
Longer. It's just all, I much prefer, generally in life, I prefer one-on-one than the big crowd, which is maybe ironic as well. So I love, we've set up one-to-one consults with artists. There's a couple of them in the room right now, which makes me really happy. And I love working with them that way because you find you have your initial hour, but then I normally take another hour to condense my notes or collect my thoughts about what we reviewed. I sometimes give them advice. I sometimes sort of give them a bullet point, like, this is what I think you could and should do next. But oftentimes I end up being sort of friends and colleagues with them well beyond that initial consult, which would be the same for the collector stuff. So it's a bigger relationship than the 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Do you notice any common threads that always come up in these calls?
Ooh. Do I notice that? Yeah, well, yes. I don't know how honest to be. Yikes.
Okay, everybody turn off your phones.
Yeah, exactly.
Turn off
Everyone
the video.
take out your
We're gonna
phones.
get on
That's what you should do. No, I think, listen, and it's no surprise that the business is called Scene for a reason. Artists want to be seen, and helping them figure out how best to make that happen. And that's not me saying that there's like a 10-step guide to finding representation or getting into a museum, but that there are kind of organizational things that most artists can do that will help them introduce themselves better. So I often find great artists come to me and are like, no one knows me. And then I look at their website and there's nothing on it. Or they're not willing to come to a fair and walk around and figure out which galleries they might have relationships with the work there to then figure out whether they fit in those stables. So we talk about that sort of stuff. You consult too, though, don't you?
Yeah. And I've noticed the same thing, which is artists, I think the way you said it is great. They want to be seen. I would have said it like they want galleries. And I find that maybe an interesting thing I've been thinking about is maybe you don't need a gallery. Like, same how you've created a whole new job that didn't exist 10 years ago in the art world, similar a little bit to what I'm doing. Artists can also maybe choose a different path that is on their own terms a little bit more. I mean, as an entrepreneur, that's sometimes like what I kind of want to be like. Sometimes a gallery makes sense, but I actually feel like there's sometimes an entrepreneurial spirit that artists have where I'm like, maybe you could consider doing something on your own. I don't know if you have an opinion, like what is going to be the future of galleries?
Oh God, not going there. Who knows the future of galleries? Who knows the future of anything, especially right now? I think the ecosystems are changing, though. And I think that, as I said, there's enough people who are questioning the way things work and whether they work best for artists. And I'm not sure at the moment that they do. I'm not sure that they do for galleries either. I mean, look at the number of galleries who are closing, especially in London. We've had a spate of 4 or 5 absolutely fantastic galleries who have gone under. So there's something really out of whack, and I think that all those businesses need to look at themselves and figure out what's working and what's not working.
Yeah, like this new ecosystem that we're moving into, I think maybe could be based a little bit more into getting back to communicating art. That it's our job to communicate art, but it's also artists' job, galleries' jobs to communicate art. And the way that it used to be, you walk into a museum, you walk into a gallery, you look at the art. That's not the only way that exists now. So I love recommending to artists, start a newsletter, get on Substack. I've seen cool galleries getting on Substack or, doing Instagram videos, and it really stands out. So it's kind of, we're all intermeshing now, I feel.
Yeah, for sure. I've used this example a couple times before, so forgive me if you've all heard it, but my children are city kids. We spend a couple of weeks in Vermont, where my mom and dad are based. And so they have access to the woods then, and they got really into mountain biking. And by the time they were 5 and 7, they were mountain bike experts. And I was so confused until I realized that they were following 6 people on YouTube, and they had half an hour. They have half an hour a day where they can watch YouTube, and they were watching these people passionately, and they come in and they'd be like, "Let me tell you about the Maven limited edition." And I was like, "Oh my God, you sound like art collectors. What has happened, and how has this happened?" And realized it was the YouTube thing. And I was like, why doesn't the art world have that? Why don't we have artists? So one of the people they follow is a Red Bull rider, so he's an expert. He's the top of his field, but he's super giving, and he's always on telling people how to make jumps and land jumps and whatever mountain bikers do. Until I've really been paying attention. But then there's another guy he's a tech. So I was like, why don't we have art techs telling, and there's a couple art tech accounts on Instagram that are hilarious and amazing. But why don't we have an art tech being like, I'm going to show you how to hang this thing and make sure it's straight, and I'm going to help you with the lighting, and I'm going to help you with the art world hasn't done that yet, and I think there's a massive opportunity for all of us to open that up. Like, open up. We are experts. Let's share our knowledge.
I think that's a good idea for somebody in the audience to steal. Like, go
Steal
like,
it.
start your Instagram account. And I think Red Bull actually is an interesting thing to bring up because you're like, I think Scene maybe is kind of like the Red Bull of the art world.
God, yes. I love that. I just need a drink
Yeah, I mean, yeah, direct-to-consumer products.
that will fund the whole passion part.
Yeah.
Don't have that yet.
Yeah, that's maybe the art. I don't know.
Maybe the art.
I wonder how we're doing for time and if we should open it up to questions. Yes, I'm getting a nod. So I feel like a lot of people are going to have great questions, and a mic is going to come into the audience.
I'd like to remind my mother she's not allowed to ask any questions.
Okay, yes. We can't hear you. Sorry. We'll just give it a minute. There's a little tech issue.
Blah, blah, blah. Oh. Hey, I was just thinking and asking myself, and I have the honor to ask you, so it's so fun. Because you don't, I feel from my point of view, you don't fit in like the casual curator that we see or imagine, or, you know, sometimes in the art world we have a role and you're like so, I think, different and authentic, and I was wondering, did you ever felt like, ooh, I don't fit in, but I'm gonna do my thing, or you just don't bother yourself with that?
I have no idea what I'm doing here. Like, every day. No, we should probably go back to the part of the story where I have never, I was in the gallery system. So grad school, I'm then in grad school. I get a job running a nonprofit. I'm writing for Seattle Weekly. I'm like living the dream in Seattle. I then get a job at James Harris Gallery. So I'm running a commercial gallery, a nonprofit, and I'm writing. And I'm like, this is the best thing ever. And then I did a show with a little known artist at the time called Rashid Johnson, and got recruited to go and run a gallery in New York. And when I got back to New York, I was miserable because I am not that mold. I'm not really a salesperson. I'm good at selling things, but I'm not like sales-driven art gallery director. Like, I'm not gonna call you every minute to buy a Rashid Johnson, even though you should all buy a Rashid Johnson. You should have 20 years ago when I did the show with him. But that's not me at all. And then I'm not really, like, I am academic and I love the nerdy part, but I'm way too excitable to be academic, so I don't fit in that ivory tower. I wish I did. I wish I could finish my PhD, or start it, really. But I won't ever, because I'd be too distracted. So no, I'm not. But I guess the grace of getting older is you stop giving a shit. And you realize that in all the ways that the world has not worked for me, when I've tried to make it work myself and do exactly what Tatum just described, like invent the thing. So I started my own business because I was like, there's got to be a better way for me to do this. How do I support artists outside of the White Cube? If the White Cube doesn't work for me, I know, we'll do pop-ups, which there wasn't a term from that when the business started. So I called them temporary exhibitions. Lame. But so yeah, no, and I still, there are definitely people in the art world. I've been amazed by how embraced we are by the art world, and like, I'll call Brittany screaming when some big director of a huge museum, like the biggest museum in the world, follows us, and I'm like, oh, okay, so they don't hate us. That's okay. Maybe my way is okay. But I totally feel like a fish out of water, and that at any moment, no, I was going to say that at any moment it's all going to fall apart, but I don't feel that way. But I don't think it matters that I don't fit in anymore. Maybe. I don't know. Did I answer that? Maybe, sort of. I feel bad.
I think you answered. We have lots of questions, so let's keep going.
Hi, longtime fan. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because fellow nerd, super into going deep with language and being able to see how far you can push that. I love learning language from artists. I love learning the like kind of almost like non-art language that people on LinkedIn are using to be able to sell art, but corporately. So that said, and understanding the kind of balance between art speak that you're like, this is poetry, like we need to dive into this and people need to not be afraid. But poetry often is abstract and doesn't make sense. And so how do you find the balance in consulting with artists and giving them language that is inaccessible to be able to represent their work, but also learning kind of language that is accessible to corporate kind of businesses? Like, are we trying to push this language further and educate, but then there's this level of like, well, you're educating and looking down on and it's inaccessible? I'm really struggling with it. I think you're like a rock star at this. What do you think?
Thank you. I don't know that I'm a rock star.
I disagree.
I still read a lot. Like, I don't read fiction anymore because I'm busy reading art criticism and trying to understand where the language is going and who's doing it well, and whether it's relevant anymore. For the first time in a bazillion years, I don't have a subscription to Artforum. And that worries me a little bit, but it's not doing it for me, whereas other things are. And like, I'm an optimist and an idealist, and I do think that this is a moment where things are changing, and I don't know if we're going to end up with a sort of John Berger style ways of seeing, exactly, where art criticism stops being as dense as it was, because it needs to be. And there's a part of me that thinks that this density tied in with the over-financialization of the art market, because we had to create rarity and density and scarcity. Sorry, not density. So the answer is I don't know. But I think it's really important, and it is most definitely a muscle that I keep trying to flex and use. So when I come out of an artist consult, I'll spend time trying to describe their work in the way that I would like to have it described to me, right? So like, start with what it looks like go back to my art history roots and describe what it looks like, describe what the references are, really do a formal analysis of what's in front of me. But that's for me, right? That doesn't end up on Instagram, or seldom does. Maybe it should. Yeah.
How much do you share of your own nerdiness to be able to feel like people need that in their, you know what I mean?
Yeah. We spend a lot of time sharing the books we read. So our newsletter, even the free newsletter, if you sign up for the one on the QR code, that we send out, books we're excited about, and some of those are, a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, practice. That's kind of what it comes down to. It's a muscle. It's generative. I know there is a question over here, I think, as well. Oh, right here, yeah.
Took some detours, and I'm interested in those notes on your lap, and if there's some things there that were closer to the subject that we're here to talk about today, about how to communicate art. Are there things that you missed from the notes that we could?
I don't know. I think I was interested in having a little bit of a chat about how what I think is the most effective way to talk about something that you've seen. And that for me starts with a formal analysis. Like, I do go back to my, I can't even remember what the course was at the University of Washington, but it was like the intro to art criticism, and we had to read all of those horrible texts that you were like, where's the artwork in here? I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. And then I realized that a formal analysis was what lit me up, right? If you listen to someone read somebody describe what they're seeing with their eyes, the edges of a composition, the material, that for me is the most sort of seductive place to begin, and then you get into artist intent, which I think is so important. And again, personally for me, probably the most important thing, which is why we have centered artist stories in Scene's mission, because that's how I think you most effectively communicate art. Hear it from the horse's mouth, right? I really don't want to read a press release written by someone who's 3 times removed in a gallery who maybe has never even been to the artist's studio. I'd like to hear the artists speak for themselves. And I know that then puts the onus back on the artists to be great communicators, like with language, not just visually. And I know that that's an impossible task, but I see our role as sort of helping to translate. So that would have been the only thing that I wish we had had time to touch on.
Yeah, and the other thing is that there is the formal analysis, and there is the intent, and sometimes we need to realign those things. It's not always the artist's interpretation of their own work that connects with that, because they have their intent, and then there's the object.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a thought on this as well. It's slightly different, but as a critic, as somebody that writes about art often, I often think about it as an interdisciplinary thing. I love to take a piece of art and talk about it through the lens of literature, film, music, something that I think that most people have more access to, more familiarity, a little less intimidating. So, I'll take, I don't know, a Hitchcock film, and that's how I start the review, to like kind of warm it up. And then somebody's like, oh, right, I can think about this painting through something that I already know well. And I don't know, I've always really loved to communicate art through that. It's also kind of how I think, but yeah, I also love this idea of hearing directly from the artist, and then we can be that translator. Yes. Where did that microphone go? And we're good on time still? Great. We have the room until they kick us out.
I have a really interesting question about communicating art. There's art criticism that's formal. There's informal 1 minute and 30-second statements on Instagram. There's galleries who put out press releases and statements for the artists. There's people who are invited to write those outside the galleries. And we're now becoming much more of a digital world. So there were some comments made throughout your talk about how galleries maybe are not necessary anymore. Perhaps, artists have all these other venues now to go direct. That talks to other different things in the world, but somebody has to speak on behalf of the artist. So the gallery was usually the one to speak about the artist's work. An artist without representation has to speak for themselves. So I guess the question is, how do these artists not find galleries? We all know that that's difficult, and there's a lot of wonderful artists that maybe will never find the right gallery or a gallery. And there's other opportunities, lots of them today with digital, lots, as you can well attest to. So, but whose role is it now to talk about art? Because the art that, really gets a lot of attention is art that looks good digitally, and some art just doesn't translate that way. So who's speaking about art? And that's why your platforms are both very good, because you're giving the tidbits to reach a mass audience that isn't going to museums or galleries regularly, likes what you have to say. You're giving them the tidbits on the current news. You're giving them tidbits on artists that maybe are not represented. So your platforms are really important to reach a large audience. They're really important, no matter who's doing it. Art advisors try and do it. People who post regularly, who go to galleries, try and do it. And it's really important, because really the goal is to show the world how much great art there actually is. But it is interesting, and all the suggestions that you're making, you know, to talk about art, to write about art, to speak about it in plain language is important. So it's not really a question, it's more like keep up and encourage more people to do exactly what you're doing and find different, more and new creative ways to do that so that more people pay attention to what's going on in a very valuable art world.
That's really sweet. Thank you. And maybe I will just say, we didn't talk, but I think it is sometimes the role of the collector to also be championing the artists and their collection. You know, there's a role for everybody in the art world to be taking on that role of championing artists. Like, it could be anybody, a bystander. But yeah, if you're a collector, like, please post the work, because that's how you're going to get your contemporaries also interested in collecting art. Alex, yeah?
Just to add to that, I really don't want the takeaway from the audience or from this talk to be that we don't need galleries, obviously because of where we are, but also because galleries also are evolving, and the way that the relationships they have with their artists are evolving, the way that they support their careers are evolving. And I think some of the best galleries around are looking much more strategically and specifically with each individual artist according to their needs and their interests in their career. That doesn't always mean attracting more collectors or becoming blue chip or being in an auction. It often means more residencies, more communication with people across the globe, you know, institutional opportunities, etc. So we are not saying no to galleries, just that yes, it's an expanded world and there are many, many ways to do things.
Yeah, I mean, curators and gallerists were often the first people to get grief. And I found this with some of, like, whenever I touch a nerve online, it's someone being like, who are you to say anything about anything? You're just a curator. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know why you're so mad at me, but parasite, I've been called, so that's fun. And I think galleries get this as well, that it's like we're trying to monetize creativity, or like ride on the coat strings of creativity. And that's certainly not why I'm in the business, and nor is it why most of the gallerists I know are in the business. Everyone's in this because we love it. We go and get jobs that are far better paid and far less difficult and far less demanding in terms of time, if that wasn't the case. So I'm with you. I think we need great galleries that support artists holistically in the way that this fair does, for sure. And I think we need more curators who are interested in centering artists at the core of their shows, and I mean that very deliberately.
Yes, in no way are we saying replace galleries. I love, love, love galleries. And I think that the word that you use, kind of that expansiveness, it's like thinking about all the things that we're talking about as these traditional kind of silos in the art world, but instead it's just like can be this whole new world, new era that's expansive for artists, for galleries, for writers. It's like something that can be embraced and is very exciting. If there's one more question, we can do that, and otherwise we can just wrap this up.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.